Welcome to LaughNapkin. What do you do when the supervisor you don't get along with tells you that he's going to do something that could jeopardize his career and demands that you give him a hand with it? Well, it's simple. You give him a hand and watch the madness unfold. Stick around for this story plus 2 more in episode 4 of r/MaliciousCompliance. Want more stories from your favorite subreddits? Of course you do. Hit that subscribe button and bell for some of the best daily Reddit stories. Supervisor breaks the rules, burns down his life. Just a quick intro before I begin. I'm posting this here instead of one of the revenge subs because even though the consequences this individual faced were amazing, they came about solely through his own decisions and actions. In fact, I warned him not to do it, but once he set his course, I followed his instructions to the letter. Now my story. It's a long one, but worth the read, I think. Several years ago, I worked as a local delivery driver for a steel processing plant. We would take stock units of plate and structural steel and process them into parts so customers could use. Some processes, such as painting, would go to a third-party vendor and then come back to us for shipment to the customer. I worked on a set routine: deliver to the paint shop in the morning and bring back the orders painted the day before. While the trailer was being unloaded, I would hook another trailer and deliver finished orders to a customer about 70 miles away from the shop. This delivery had a hard appointment time of 2 p.m., and I could not miss it. When I returned after making that delivery, I would finish the day with short deliveries or pickups as needed and then go home. It was an easy, stress-free job as long as I stuck to my routine and made my appointments on time. Communication between departments was poor though, and it disrupted the entire process. For example, the scheduling department might think a certain production run had been finished and was gone for outside processing, when in reality, the production department hadn't even started the order yet. I spent a lot of afternoons driving in an empty truck chasing phantom orders that I knew had never delivered because some office drone wanted me to check and make sure. Or running hot orders out to vendors that were overlooked during my morning trip. Enter my main antagonist, one of the first shift production supervisors. I was constantly butting heads with him because he forever tried to hold up my truck for last-second add-ons. This would have been a big deal, except they were almost always interfering with my 2 p.m. delivery, the one I had to be on time for. I kept explaining that I could do his errands in the morning or afternoons, but he couldn't mess with the middle of the day. He was arrogant and condescending with everyone. He took a special dislike towards me because I wasn't in his chain of command, and I wouldn't bend over backwards to accommodate his wants. It didn't help that my direct superior was a milquetoast little man that avoided conflict at any cost. I ended up taking a lot of heat from this production supervisor, even though he couldn't really punish me for meeting my other work obligations. Things finally came to a head when the supervisor came up to shipping with a large order that needed to go to paint. I was about to leave my 2 p.m. customer and told him so, but I had room left on the truck. If he wanted to load his parts on, I would deliver them on the way back from my primary delivery. This wasn't good enough for him. These parts were behind schedule and had to get painted immediately. If I delivered them in the afternoon, they wouldn't get painted until the following day, which would put him further behind. To top it off, this order required a special marine grade paint that had been mistakenly delivered to our company location instead of the paint shop, and it needed to go ASAP. We began our usual back and forth. I had a delivery appointment. I could do what he wanted, but I couldn't do it on his schedule. After a heated conversation, where he devolved into rudeness and name-calling of a nature unbecoming of his position, he said, "Fine, I'll take it myself in the other truck." In addition to the tractor trailer that I drove, we had a smaller delivery truck on hand for occasional use. He decided to drive it on the down low, loading up and heading out without telling our shipping department. This would have been a grand idea, but driving either truck requires a commercial driver's license, which this supervisor did not have. I pointed this out to him, to which he replied that he was only going up the road and everything would be fine. I pointed out that he didn't have a hazardous materials endorsement to transport the paint. Again, he was just going up the road, and I needed to shut the hell up, write him out directions to the paint shop, and get out of his way, since I was useless anyway. So I did just that, and wrote him out a perfect set of turn-by-turn directions. How is that malicious compliance? Well, this paint shop was about 30 miles up the road, but I knew, and he didn't, that about 15 miles up the road was a DOT way station that always had at least 2 state troopers inside, and at least one of them was a commercial enforcement officer. The truck the supervisor wanted to drive wasn't equipped with an EasyPass transponder that would allow him to bypass the scale, and I knew, given his already demonstrated ignorance, he wouldn't know he was required to pull in. I figured he would blow right past, and that one of those troopers would put down his coffee long enough to chase him down and find out why. To my great delight, that is exactly what happened. The troopers saw him drive right past and pulled him over. Then they escorted him back to the way station for a thorough inspection. For those unfamiliar, the transportation industry is highly regulated. Some might say it's over-regulated, but anyone that makes it a career knows it's best to follow the laws or face some serious consequences. The supervisor didn't know any of this, and was like a lamb to the slaughter. The DOT inspector ripped him to pieces. Among the biggest infractions, he was cited for no CDL, $2,500 fine, up to $10,000 to the company, misdemeanor charges, 90 days suspended driver's license, no hazmat endorsement, no documenting paperwork for the hazmat, no place cards identifying the vehicle as carrying hazardous materials, $50,000 fine to the company, more if it results in illness, injury, or death to another person. As a bonus, when the trooper escorted him back to the way station, the scale master saw him talking on his cell phone. The dude was making a panic call to the company manager. Using a handheld device is a big no-no. That's another $2,500, $10,000 to $11,000 to the company. The truck was put out of service at the way station until it had the proper bill of lading, hazmat paperwork, and driver with a valid license. The supervisor wasn't allowed to leave himself until someone came to get him. Needless to say, he lost his job immediately. I suspected that would happen, so I hung around the shipping office after my afternoon delivery. I got to witness his walk of shame as he was escorted out of the building. I was never officially told how much his fines were, but an educated guess puts it at thousands to him personally and potentially close to $100,000 to the company. I do know the company tried to sue him in civil court to recoup their losses, although I don't know the outcome. I left to take another job shortly after. I figured even though I wasn't the one at fault, my role in the fiasco wouldn't be looked upon in kind fashion. The best part though was that after months of watching him swagger around wearing a big Hugh Breeze cowboy hat, I was the one that got to swat it off his head. Will you train your own replacement and make yourself obsolete? Of course I will. Let me first say that I've been a lurker here for quite some time and always enjoy your stories, especially when you stick it to stupid bosses. Actors, names changed obviously. Bob, boss at the time, old, can't keep up with technology, but had been with the company for a long time so got to be my boss. Hans, hero of the story, friend from school who works in the same company but in management in a different department. Helped me get this job 4 years prior. Caroline, coworker who is not the smartest tool in the shed, but makes up for it in work ethic. Carl, normal coworker who has worked at company for 6 years and handles mostly the old clients' accounts. Has a family, very busy. Me. Well, me. Guy in his late 20s, a little geeky, likes computers. This was a small company and our team of 3 were best described as tech support for our clients, but it went a bit further than that. I usually help with setting up databases and also advise clients from time to time if they would benefit from upgrading their plan, etc. As normal with tech support, we got tickets from the clients and would work away at them one by one. I liked the challenging problems and usually tried to work hard at them, and it just so happened that Caroline liked the more standard problems and enjoyed doing something she already knew over something new every day. Nothing wrong with that. As you might imagine, we two made a good team and had these kind of unwritten rules who took which tickets. Win-win, win-win. Me, Caroline, company, and client. Until we got a new boss, Bob. He immediately noticed that I was working far fewer tickets than Caroline. I tried to explain to him how not every ticket is the same workload, but because he wasn't very tech savvy and didn't understand half the stuff I was doing, he did not understand. Also, around 1 month later, we got a huge new client and I spent a week on site setting up all the databases and stuff they needed. This drew down my month average ticket numbers even further, duh. If Bob would have only had half a brain cell, he could have figured out why. Now came something I did not expect from Bob. He said we need more help on the team, and he was approved to hire a 4th member for our team. I was excited. We all were. We had this huge new client, and things were not yet running smoothly, and anyway, our company was expanding fast, so this actually made sense. And he specifically asked me to basically do the recruiting process to work the new guy in. He might have figured out that he did not have a clue what we were doing, I thought, which I was happy to do. That same night, Hans calls me, which is weird because Hans is not a caller, he's a texter. He basically said, "You should come over to my house tomorrow, I have some beers that need drinking." So the next day I get to Hans's house and we're just talking about normal stuff. We see each other maybe once per month and have a big overlapping friend pool, but this time it was just me and him drinking beers, no other friends around. After some beers, he mentioned that he had just updated his resume the day before and that everyone should always have an updated resume on hand. "Do you have an up-to-date resume?" he asked. I felt this was a weird question and I had an idea where this was going, so I said no, but should I? "Is there something you know about that you want to tell me?" He says, "Well, I'm just saying that everyone should have a resume ready, but I of course couldn't tell you if Bob thinks about letting you go, but I also couldn't tell you if Bob is not thinking about letting you go." I thanked him very much for the beers and left shortly after that. So I know I'm getting fired, and I have the suspicion that Bob has just asked me to hire my own replacement and train him to do my job so he could take it. This is finally where the sweet malicious compliance comes in. I fully comply with hiring a 4th member of the team, and also pick one best suited for what Bob wants, high ticket numbers. So I'm thinking not so smart person with a sloppy attitude that does not care if the customer's happy. After all, customer satisfaction was not important to Bob when he talked about my ticket numbers. I get right on it. Many people apply, some good ones, but I weed those out very quickly. Resumes with lots of spelling mistakes and little experience in the sector are the ones I invite for an interview. The interview stage is trickier because now Bob and someone from human research is sitting with me, but I'm still asking most of the questions and giving my opinions on the candidates. But because I weeded out the good ones, when Bob makes a decision, he just chose the best of the worst. In my opinion, not even the best, because one applicant was actually quite good, but I asked him stupid questions that didn't even make sense, and when he could not answer them, I made him look really bad. Sorry, John. I advise one client he ends up picking, because he will work very fast and get a lot of tickets done. At this point, I have another job lined up in 4 months' time, but I wanted to get fired by Bob to get some sweet severance pay. After 2 months of training Mr. New Guy, I have just shown him how to do basic tickets, which he can do quite well and fast but makes a lot of mistakes with, and have left the hard ones to slowly build up. Carl notices, and as he would be the only one after my firing to be able to handle them, I let him in on what I was doing. As chance will have it, he had just gotten an offer from another company, and since he also didn't like Bob, he already decided that he will take the offer, but said he could sit on it a few weeks and time it with my firing for maximum destruction. Then I tell Bob I'm done working in the New Guy, and a week later he tells me he sadly needs to let me go because my numbers had not gotten better. He actually used against me that I had not been doing that many tickets while I was training the New Guy. How dumb can you even be, Bob? He also wished me a lot of luck finding a new place to work at with my work ethic. This had been the day I was waiting for, and I just thanked Bob and reminded him of the 4 months worth of severance paid I was owed now, and also 2 months worth of vacation I had not taken and carried over and was now entitled to get paid out. As I'm heading out, I tell Carl what had just happened, and he opens his drawer with the signed 2 weeks notice and walks into Bob's office. My girlfriend had vacation time left, and we decided to leave for a 4-week holiday to New Zealand the next week. I proposed to her there. As the saying goes, spend a quarter of your severance on the engagement ring. I started my new job 1 month after returning from New Zealand, and even got a nice pay bump and a good boss. I made sure to thank Hans again, and he kept me in the loop on how my old department went down the drain very quick, and Bob was let go sometime later. When this happened, they actually approached me for taking his job, and I declined. But that would have been the ultimate screw you to him. About 5 years later, last year, I started a company together with Hans, doing much of the same thing but in a different city, and so far it's going really well. I can solve this bullying problem. Let me be clear, at no point did my kid assault another kid. A simple story, and it still makes me smile a couple years later. A little background. My ex is awesome. Her and I just were not meant for each other. She loves our son, but she hates confrontation. She also works for the school board, so she has to behave a certain way. I, on the other hand, have a tendency to scare people. I'm a large person, and since I work in the trades, I don't have to look or act in any way whatsoever. The story. My son, who had been taking Taekwondo for about 4 years at the time, was being bullied in school. He did the right thing and told a teacher. I guess the bully was her relative in some way because she told my son not to be a tattletale. My son once again did the right thing and told his mother, who he lives with. I work in the oil field, so I'm not always in the city. She decided not to follow up because she doesn't want to stir the pot at work. My son called me and told me what happened. I talked to his mom and verified the story. I asked her why she hadn't done anything about the problem, and she said that if I really cared, I would do something. You want me to take care of this? Okay. Cue the malicious compliance. I made an appointment with the principal for my next week off. Myself and my son met with the principal and the teacher in question. I explained the situation and asked what was to be done. The principal said that this was the first time he was hearing about it, but the teacher claimed that it did not happen. I then turned to my son and said, "The next time that kid bullies you, I give you permission to punch him in the throat." The principal and the teacher both looked at me like I was about to kill them. The principal said, "You can't say that." I said, "Are you sure? Let me try again and find out. Hey boy, the next time that kid bullies you, you have my permission to punch him in the throat." Holy crap, you were wrong. I can totally say that. The bullying stopped. Well, that about wraps it up. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button and bell. By the way, I just started a Discord server for anyone looking to be part of the LaughNapkin community. Link in the description below. See you next time.